Hey there, and welcome to Codecademy. My name is Galina, and I'm a developer from New York. Today we'll be covering the box model Dave's Burgers freeform project, part of the Learn CSS course. Now, before we get started, let's take a look at some of the concepts we'll be working with today. To complete this project, you'll need to be familiar with the following CSS box model properties: height, width, padding, border, margin, and overflow. In this project, you will follow step-by-step instructions to fix a fictional restaurant's website. All of the HTML and most of the CSS is intact, but the box model properties have yet to be set. You'll use knowledge of height, width, padding, border, and margin to complete this project. The website's existing index.html and style.css files are displayed in the text editor to the right. Here they are. As you work, use both to see which elements you are selecting and styling. Most of the elements that you'll need to add styles for already have rule sets in style.css, to which you can add additional declarations. All right, now let's get started with number 1. You'll go through Dave's Burgers menu item roughly from top to bottom. Let's begin with styling the nav element containing the logo and navigation elements. So we are going to be styling this portion of our page. Let's set the width of the image to 180 pixels. So let's navigate to our CSS file, locate our nav CSS selector, and here it is. And specifically for image, we're going to set the width to 180 pixels. Great. And now we want to center the image horizontally using the margin property. So in the following line, let's add the margin property. We'll first set the top and bottom to 0, and then to center horizontally, we're going to use auto. Now let's save and take a look for the changes in the browser. Perfect. Our image is now centered horizontally and has a width of 180 pixels. Let's check off step 1 and let's move on to step 2. Set margin of span elements inside the nav to 10 pixels on the top and bottom and 0 pixels on the left and right. Let's locate the CSS selector for that. And here it is. And let's set the top and bottom of our margin to 10 pixels and 0 for the left and the right. So let's navigate back to our HTML file and locate our span elements. And they are the menu, nutrition, order, and locations elements that we see on the page. Now let's hit save and observe the changes in the browser. Perfect, so we've added spacing to the top and bottom of each element. Now let's check off step 2 and move on to step 3. Now set some rules for the element with the class content. Here we have our class content. This element is a container for all the elements not included in the nav. So we see it includes the header right here, as well as the body that we see over here, and followed by the button and nutrition information. Let's navigate back to our CSS file, locate that selector, and it is on line 40. And we want to set the height to 500 pixels. So let's use the height property as well as 500 pixels. Now let's save. And now create 10 pixel vertical margins and automatic horizontal margins. So let's use margin property, set 10 pixels for vertical and auto for automatic horizontal margins. Let's hit save. And now let's set the body elements inside content to have no vertical margin and automatic horizontal margins so that it is centered. So let's locate our body elements inside content. Here they are. And set the margin to 0 pixels and auto. Okay, now let's hit save and take a look at all of the changes that were made. So now we can see that we've added 10 pixel vertical margins and we've centered our content and set the height to 500 pixels. Let's check off step 3 and move on to step 4. With the 500 pixel height for content, some elements will overflow out of its box if the browser window is made too small. Make content scrollable with the overflow property. So content we want to have scrollable. going to use overflow, scroll. Let's hit save. And now we want to resize the browser window so it is very skinny, and notice that this section is now scrollable. So let's resize our window, and we should see a little scroll pop up to the right. And here it is. Great. Let's move this back. Check off step 4 and move on to step 5. Now it's time to tackle the header and its H1 text barbecue bacon burger. Set the height of the header class to 320 pixels. Let's locate our header class element and set its height to 320 pixels. Let's save and observe the changes to the right. So we've increased our header size significantly to 320 pixels, and we can now see the picture clearly, though our H1 stayed the same. Now we want to create a 20 pixel padding for the H1 element inside the header, and that would be on line 56. So let's add a padding property, followed by 20 pixels. Let's save. And we can see the space that we've added between the content and the border. And the text no longer feels crammed. Now we want to set vertical margins to 0 pixels and the horizontal margins to be determined automatically for the same H1 element. So working in the same selector, we're going to set the vertical margin to 0. So that's 0 pixel, and the horizontal margins to be determined automatically. So we're going to use auto. Let's save and take a look at our centered H1 in the browser. Perfect. Let's check off step 5 and move on to step 6. Now add some box model formatting to the order now button element. So the button element, let's locate that in our HTML. And here it is on line 41. Now let's take a look at where that is in our browser. And here it is, right between the paragraph and the nutrition information. So we want to set the width to 200 pixels. And as you make each change, make sure to scroll down if necessary to view the effect on the button. So let's navigate back to our CSS file, locate our button element, and here it is on line 85, and we're going to set the width to 200 px. Let's save. We notice that the Order Now button has shifted to the left a bit, and we want to set the padding to 20 pixels. So working in the same CSS selector for our button element, we're going to set the padding to 20 pixels. Save. We can hover over our button and notice the additional spacing that's been added around the text. Now we want to set the vertical margins to 40 pixels and the horizontal margins to automatic. So let's add the margin property and set vertical margins to 40 px and horizontal margins to automatic, so auto. Let's save, and we should now see our button centered. Perfect, here it is. And we can also see some additional spacing that we've added outside of the element. And lastly, we want to give the button a 1 pixel solid blue border. So we're going to use the border property, and it will be 1 pixels solid in the color blue. Let's save, observe the changes to the right, and here we can see our border. Great, now let's check off step 6 and move on to step 7. Finally, style the nutrition facts section at the bottom. In the element selected with ul.nutrition, let's locate that. Here it is on line 104. We want to set the padding of the UL nutrition element to 20 pixels. So let's scroll down in our page and locate where that is. So we're going to be styling this section of our website. So let's set the padding to 20 pixels. Then set the width of LI elements within the ul.nutrition to 200 pixels. So we're going to be setting the width of each individual list item to 200 pixels. So that would be on line 112, width 200 pixels. Let's save and take a look. Now each element's width has increased to 200 pixels. So let's increase the size of our browser window to observe the change. All right, and now the next bullet point asks us to set a 10 pixel vertical padding and 20 pixel horizontal padding to the same elements. So let's set the padding property to have 10 pixel vertical padding and 20 pixel horizontal padding. Save. And now let's add a 3 pixel bottom margin to the same elements. So this should create some spacing between the elements. Margin 3px. Oh, and because this is bottom, we do have to specify that. So margin dash bottom 3 pixels. Let's scroll down. And we can now clearly see the individual elements here. Perfect. Now let's check off step 7 and move on to step 8. Good job. The menu item is looking great and the layout and spacing is much more readable. If you'd like, you can continue refining the design or add your own spin. Congratulations, we've come to an end to our project. And as step suggests, of course, feel free to continue modifying this item in any way that you would like. I hope this walkthrough was helpful, and I'll see you next time. Happy coding!